When her cousin announced in front of the crowd that her major general boyfriend was actually her fiancé, the eyes of the entire Smith family instantly turned toward Chloe. They were all terrified that she would flip the banquet table right then and there, but she merely offered a flat, two-word response. Congratulations. The smile on Sarah's face stiffened for a brief moment. Chloe, please don't blame me for hiding this from you, Sarah said. Marcus and I have been together for a very long time. It's just that, seeing how devoted you've been to him all these years, I only dared to wait until our engagement day to tell you. During the family dinner in her past life, Chloe had completely broken down upon hearing this happy news. She had run out of the military compound in tears, with Sarah chasing after her, calling her name. While crossing the street, Sarah was struck by an out-of-control truck and died instantly on the spot. Afterward, Marcus attended the funeral with an expressionless face, then vanished for a whole month. When he reappeared, he used the future of the Smith family as a threat to force Chloe into marrying him. On their wedding night, he took the night shift at the military base. The bridal chamber was filled with black and white memorial portraits of Sarah, and he forced Chloe to kneel before them every day to repent. After 3.5 years of marriage, the relentless psychological torture caused her to suffer a complete mental collapse. On a snowy winter night, she lay in a bathtub full of ice water and used a shard of the crystal military insignia he had given her to slit her wrists. When he returned, he coldly muttered a single sentence. "It's better that she's dead." He then kicked everyone out and left her body to rot. In the end, it was her childhood friend, Ethan, who rushed back from overseas to collect her remains. Hey guys, ever lost yourself chasing the wrong person? Today's story is about Chloe, who finally stops fighting for a toxic relationship and chooses to level up her own life instead. Let's get into it. Now that she was given a second chance at life, she absolutely would not be a fool who blindly threw herself into the fire like a moth to a flame again. Chloe set her glass of water down, her tone calm. In the past, I was young and naive. I harbored feelings for Uncle Marcus that I shouldn't have, and caused quite a few ridiculous scenes. Now that I've found a boyfriend my own age, it's time I settled down and focused on a proper relationship. She said Ethan's name out loud. Marcus, who had been completely silent the whole time, finally shifted his gaze to her. His eyes narrowed slightly, and his voice dropped low. How is it that I didn't know you had been secretly dating someone right under my nose? Since when? Chloe's expression remained unchanged as she greeted her relatives and took a seat at the table. She proactively pulled out the chair next to Marcus, leaving the double seats next to the head of the table for him and Sarah. Her parents pulled her over to offer him a toast, thanking him for looking after her over the past 5 years. She held her wine glass, stepped in front of him, and delivered a measured toast, her tone carrying just the right amount of polite distance. Marcus, on the other hand, gripped his glass until his knuckles turned white, his face gradually darkening. Halfway through the banquet, her phone vibrated. The screen showed an overseas call. She stood up and walked out to the Smith family's backyard to answer it. Through the receiver came Ethan's astonished voice. "Chloe, your cousin just texted me asking if I'm really dating you. Since you've already announced to the whole family that we're together, I can't exactly blow your cover. Once I'm done with this military project, I'll come back to the States to find you." "You don't need to come back," she replied. "I've already applied for the design program at the Parsons School of Design. Once I'm done defending my graduation thesis, I'll come find you." In her past life, she had originally received a full scholarship to this exact school, but because of Marcus, she had personally torn up the acceptance letter. In this life, she absolutely would not make the same mistake again. She hung up the phone and turned around. Just as she turned the corner through the archway, she slammed into a solid chest. Looking up, she saw it was Marcus. She quickly took a half step back and called out, "Uncle Marcus." His pitch-black eyes locked onto her. "This whole dating thing is fake, isn't it? I know that Sarah and I humiliated you. That's why you just found some random guy to put on an act." She twitched the corner of her mouth. "Uncle Marcus, you're right. From now on, I will know my place and stay far away from you and my cousin." After the meal, her mother busied herself loading local specialties into Marcus's car, all the while pulling Chloe by the hand and repeatedly reminding her not to act childishly after returning to Norfolk. She replied that she had already applied to live in the on-campus dorms, so she wouldn't bother them anymore, but before she could even finish her sentence, Marcus cut her off. "The school contacted me, and I already rejected the application. You're about to defend your graduation thesis. Stop throwing a childish tantrum." Sarah also smiled and linked arms with her. "Chloe, I can practically be considered your upperclassman. Living together, I can even help you review your thesis. I've been recovering abroad for so many years, I've really missed you. Just come back and live with me at Marcus's family quarters on base." With that said, she grabbed Chloe's suitcase and loaded it into the car. In her past life, when she found out they had been together for so long, She had felt utterly betrayed by their united front and had completely broken down. But in this life, as she was pulled into the backseat of the SUV, she simply remained silent. In the days that followed, she left the house for school before dawn and didn't return to the military compound until late at night, working desperately to finish her graduation project. She tried her best to avoid them whenever they were together, but it was still hard not to stumble upon them cuddling in the living room or kissing on the balcony. Every time that happened, she wouldn't say a word, simply lowering her head and taking a detour back to her room. She couldn't even be bothered to show a single ounce of excess emotion. That was until early one morning. As soon as she came downstairs, she saw Marcus sitting on the living room sofa, his combat boots stepping on the rug, an unlit cigarette pinched between his fingers. "Chloe Smith, you've been deliberately giving us an attitude these past few days, haven't you?" She frowned instinctively. "I have not." He closed the distance in 2 or 3 strides and grabbed her wrist, his grip so strong it felt like it would crush her bones. "Do you think I can't see right through you, playing hard to get? Or do you want to let the entire base think that Sarah and I are bullying you?" Suppressing the intense pain, her tone remained calm. "Uncle Marcus, I'll keep everything you've said in mind. As soon as I finish my thesis defense, I will move out immediately. I'll never bother you and my cousin again." He let go of her hand, but his brows furrowed even tighter. "Who gave you permission to move out? After you graduate, I'll arrange for you to join the public affairs office at the base headquarters. You'll stay in Norfolk, and it just so happens you can keep Sarah company." Stay in Norfolk? Continue living in his general grade officer quarters? Continue being the shadow that could never step into the light in their romantic relationship? Just as she was about to voice her objection, he turned around, strode into the study, and slammed the door shut, denying her any chance to refuse. She quietly bought herself a one-way ticket to Zurich. Then, she spent an entire day packing up every single gift Marcus had ever given: a custom-made diamond-studded dog tag, a limited-edition tactical watch, high-end jewelry, a collector's edition fountain pen, and military merit medal commemorative ornaments. All of it was stuffed into 2 large suitcases. She knocked on his study door, her tone perfectly polite. "In the past, I was ignorant and accepted far too many expensive gifts from you. Now that you and my cousin are getting engaged, to avoid any suspicion, it's best that I return these to you," Chloe said. Marcus's gaze fell on the 2 suitcases behind her. A dark, gloomy expression gathered between his brows, and his voice was heavy, carrying a suppressed, fiery anger. "What does my upcoming engagement have to do with the things I gave you in the past? Since when did I need you to draw such a clear line with me? Throw them wherever you like. I don't have the time to deal with them for you." He stood up, pushed both her and the suitcases out of the study, and slammed the door shut. In the end, she handed all of these items over to a legitimate auction house. All the proceeds were donated to the Norfolk Orphanage and the Stray Animal Rescue Shelter. After taking care of everything and returning to the military compound, she noticed that the backyard was brightly lit. Quite a few base commanders and members of the military entertainment troupe were in attendance. She suddenly remembered that today was Sarah's birthday and hurriedly returned to her room to grab the pearl necklace she had designed herself to give as a gift. When she walked out to the backyard, Sarah was standing on the stage, wearing a white evening gown. Seeing Chloe, she smiled and waved her over onto the stage, intimately linking arms with her as she spoke into the microphone. "Marcus and I are getting engaged soon, so this is my last birthday before getting married. My cousin Chloe, as a member of the bride's family, has specially prepared a surprise video as a birthday gift for me. I haven't even seen it myself yet. Today, I invite everyone to enjoy this surprise with me." Half the blood in Chloe's body instantly ran cold. Since when had she prepared a surprise video for her cousin? The large screen behind them slowly lit up. The content playing wasn't a birthday greeting, but the secret diary she had written in a green military notebook. Page by page, it was scanned and projected. Every word, every sentence revealed her deep romantic feelings for Marcus. The audience below began to murmur and gossip. The image then transitioned, and a confession she had secretly recorded into an audio pen when she was 18 was played on a loop, alongside a photo she had secretly taken of Marcus in his military uniform. Chloe felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Her whole body stiffened, and her face turned as pale as a sheet of paper. These were things she had clearly locked away in the deepest part of her suitcase, fully planning to destroy them after graduation. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder. Some said she still hadn't given up. Others scolded her for being shameless, accusing her of blatantly trying to steal her cousin's fiancé and calling her truly malicious. The gossiping voices submerged her like a tidal wave. A crisp slap rang out. Sarah shakily withdrew her hand, her eyes red. "Chloe, I am your family, the sister who grew up with you since childhood. How could you treat me like this?" Chloe wanted to explain, but her mind was suddenly flooded with a memory from a few days ago when Sarah had used the excuse of helping her organize her clothes to rummage through her suitcase for a long time. In an instant, she understood everything. Her voice trembled. "Sarah, you did all of this on purpose, didn't you? Why would you do this?" She pressed closer to Sarah step by step, her heart aching as if it were being sawed apart by a dull knife. But before she could even touch the hem of Sarah's dress, a tremendous force slammed into her shoulder. She was shoved hard, stumbling and collapsing onto the steps of the stage. Marcus stood shielding Sarah behind him, a towering inferno of rage surging in the depths of his eyes. "So your previous well-behaved obedience was all an act. Chloe Smith, how can you be this disgusting?" Enduring the excruciating pain, she shakily raised her voice to explain, but before she could finish her sentence, another resounding slap landed on her face. She was struck so hard that she stumbled backward, collapsing onto the cold concrete floor. 5 distinct finger marks were clearly imprinted on her face. This was the first time Marcus had ever laid a hand on her. He stood towering over her, looking down as if he were staring at a pile of filthy trash. "Hurry up and take her back. Lock her in her room so she can reflect on her mistakes," he ordered. 2 orderlies grabbed her by the armpits from both sides, dragging her back to the building like a bag of garbage under the disdainful and mocking gazes of everyone present. When she was dragged to the top of the stairs on the 2nd floor, Sarah, lifting her dress, chased after them and found an excuse to send the 2 orderlies away. Only the 2 of them were left in the hallway. Her voice hoarse, Chloe asked Sarah why on earth she had done this. Sarah finally stripped away her gentle mask, her eyes brimming with sheer malice. "Chloe Smith, what right do you have to ask me why? Since we were kids, I've always had to yield to you. You are the precious young lady of the Smith family, coddled in the palm of their hands, while I could only be tossed overseas to recover from my illness, not even allowed to come home. I've liked Marcus for a full 15 years, yet I didn't even dare to confess my feelings. On what grounds did you get to act all innocent and foolish, trailing right behind him, and even getting to move into his house?" She reached out and tightly gripped Chloe's chin. "If you insist on trying to steal what's mine, naturally I have to teach you a little lesson." The sound of Marcus's footsteps echoed from the top of the stairs. Sarah's expression instantly changed. She suddenly lunged forward, covered Chloe's mouth, and pushed her off the balcony with all her might. When half of Chloe's body was dangling in midair, she instinctively grabbed onto Sarah's arm. As a result, both of them tumbled down from the 2nd floor. Following a dull thud, they crashed heavily into the holly bushes below. The sharp branches pierced into Chloe's arms, thighs, and back. The pain was so agonizing that her vision went black. The rapid thud of combat boots rushed toward them, but the person walked right past Chloe. Marcus carefully swept Sarah up into his arms, his movements as gentle as if he were cradling a priceless treasure, and hurriedly ran toward the base's general hospital. From beginning to end, he didn't cast a single glance her way, even though she was lying in a thicket of thorns, completely covered in blood. When she opened her eyes again, a full day and night had passed. She was lying in bed in her room, her entire body wrapped in bandages. Her phone was ringing wildly. Her academic advisor's stern voice came through the receiver. "Chloe Smith, your graduation project is suspected of plagiarism and fabrication. The university requires you to come here immediately to cooperate with the investigation." Clutching her laptop, she endured the excruciating pain to walk out the door, only to be blocked in the living room by Marcus, who had just returned from the hospital. She shoved the laptop screen directly in front of his face. "Why has my graduation design turned into Sarah's competition entry? You did this, didn't you?" Her advisor had said that someone reported her for plagiarizing Sarah's unpublished creative work. The other party had provided a timeline of creation that predated hers. However, this tranquility-themed military creative design was something Chloe had been inspired to make 2 years ago, and she had spent 14 months completing it entirely on her own. The only person who knew the password to the files on her laptop, other than herself, was Marcus. He nonchalantly admitted it. "I did it. This design was originally Sarah's inspiration to begin with. What gave you the rands to bully her at her birthday party, and even push her off the 2nd floor?" He opened a chat history from 2 years ago that Sarah had sent him. It contained detailed descriptions of the tranquility-themed design concepts, time-stamped earlier than when Chloe finalized her final draft. But those words were clearly the exact ones Chloe had originally sent to Sarah. Back then, she had told Sarah about this design concept centered around the core idea of unrequited love, but Sarah had always advised her to give it up. Her nails dug hard into her palms. "What if I said I have creative drafts with timestamps and cloud backups even earlier than this?" she asked. Marcus's face revealed undisguised annoyance and contempt. Gritting her teeth, she blurted out everything. The video at the birthday party was orchestrated and directed by Sarah herself. Falling from the 2nd floor, she pushed me first. She said it out of her own mouth that she hated me and just wanted to teach me a lesson. She asked if he was willing to believe her just once. His brows furrowed tightly, his voice holding nothing but disappointment. A leopard can't change its spots, making false accusations. Chloe Smith, how did I raise you to turn out like this? Clutching her laptop, she turned and walked outside, only to see a massive crowd gathering outside the walls of the compound. They were holding rotten cabbage leaves and rotten eggs, throwing them into the yard and screaming, "Go to hell, Chloe Smith. Pay with your life for those stray animals." Trembling, she took out her phone and opened the trending searches. Her name was hanging right at the top of the list. It turned out that the stray animal rescue shelter she had donated money to 2 days ago had been poisoned by someone malicious. Half of the cats and dogs had suffocated to death. Rumors firmly insisted that she was the poisoner, the only reason being that she had once had a brief argument with a staff member at the shelter. Marcus's voice was low and deep. "I know it wasn't you. But regardless of what your original intentions were, those animals ultimately died because of you. Don't go outside for the time being. I'll arrange for guards to keep watch here." It was Sarah again. She still hadn't fully vented her anger and still refused to let her off the hook. As for Marcus, just like in her past life, he only believed Sarah's one-sided story. 2 days passed. The crowd gathering outside the compound grew larger and larger. Even the guards couldn't stop them. She wanted to post on social media to prove her innocence, but all her communication devices had been confiscated by Sarah. She used the noble excuse that the more Chloe explained, the worse she would make things look. Chloe had resisted, but Marcus always protected Sarah from behind, coldly ordering his orderlies to lock Chloe in confinement. That was until Sarah's acute stomach illness flared up. Marcus carried her into the car and rushed to the base's general hospital. Before leaving, he only left one sentence for the guards: lock the main gates tightly. Less than 2 minutes after they left, the people outside picked the locks, broke down the doors, and stormed in. They grabbed her by the hair, dragged her out into the middle of the courtyard, and rained down punches and kicks on her like a storm. She curled up on the ground, desperately trying to wrap her arms around her head to protect it. A sweet, metallic taste of blood rose in her throat, and then she coughed up a large mouthful of blood. Just as she was about to give up struggling, she heard her parents' heart-wrenching screams. They led the police and the base's security guards inside to subdue everyone. Her mother burst into tears, pulling her into her arms, her voice trembling so much it was barely coherent. Chloe, how did it come to this? Where is Marcus? Where is Sarah? Is this how they take care of you?" She struggled to pry her eyelids open. Her voice was very soft, but it carried an unprecedented resolve. "Mom, Dad, I don't want to stay here anymore. I've already bought a plane ticket to Zurich. I want to leave." Her parents nodded continuously, their tears falling even harder. "Okay, Mom and Dad will take you away. We'll leave right now, and we'll never come back to this place again." Late that night, a black sedan sped across the Norfolk River overpass. She leaned her head against the car window, watching the silhouettes of the sycamore trees speeding backward outside. Watching the city that had held her bitter obsessions, lies, and betrayals across 2 lifetimes gradually disappear, she gently closed her eyes. In her heart, she silently bid a final, decisive farewell to Marcus, to Sarah, and to this absurd obsession. As the car left the city limits of Norfolk, the horizon brightened with a pale gray hue. The morning mist covered the fields on both sides of the highway like a thin veil. The air held a freshness that hadn't been felt in a long time, free from the stifling atmosphere and the smoke of gunpowder. She leaned against her mother's shoulder. The wounds on her body still throbbed with pain, but the suppressed grievance that had been pent up over 2 lifetimes gradually dissipated as they left Norfolk behind. Her father was driving. With the military compound no longer visible in the rearview mirror, he spoke in a low voice. "Chloe, I had sensed early on that the Marcus boy was biased, but I never expected him to be this foolish, unable to even distinguish between right and wrong." Her mother tightly gripped her hand, the warmth from her fingertips radiating against Chloe's skin. Choking back tears, she said, "It's because Mom and Dad didn't protect you well enough that you had to suffer so much. Zurich is good. It's good to stay far away from this place. From now on, we'll live our lives well, and never have anything to do with those people again." She closed her eyes, the bridge of her nose stinging. In her previous life, right up until her death, she had never received this kind of fierce defense from her parents. Back then, they had been threatened by Marcus with the future of the Smith family. They had to be extremely cautious, even to cast a glance at her. In the end, she died alone in a cold bathtub, and it wasn't until long after that they even received the news. In this life, thankfully, they were still here. Thankfully, she still had a way out. The car drove straight to the airport in the neighboring city. Ethan had arranged everything in advance. In the VIP lane, his assistant was waiting with her plane ticket. As soon as he saw them, he hurried over to greet them. "Miss Smith, Ethan said that the apartment in Zurich and the university enrollment procedures have all been finalized. You can move right in as soon as you arrive. If you have any issues, feel free to contact me at any time." She took the plane ticket, her fingertips brushing against the cold cardstock printed with the flight information to Zurich. Only at this moment did she finally feel a true, genuine sense of liberation. In front of the security checkpoint, her parents, their eyes red, continuously gave her parting reminders. She hugged them and said softly, "Mom, Dad, you two should head back. I'll take good care of myself. Once I'm settled, I'll bring you over to live with me." After entering the security area, she turned her head to look back. Her parents were still standing exactly where they were, waving. Their figures gradually blurred in the morning mist. She took a deep breath, turned around, and stepped onto the boarding stairs. The plane taxied down the runway and took off, piercing through the layers of clouds. Beneath her feet lay a rolling sea of clouds. Norfolk had been completely left behind, tens of thousands of feet below. During the 10+ hours of the flight, she kept her eyes closed almost the entire time, but she wasn't sleepy at all. Her mind kept replaying the events from her past life to this one. She thought of the first time she met Marcus when she was 13 years old. He was wearing a crisp military uniform, standing under the sycamore tree in the military compound, reaching out to help her brush a fallen leaf off her shoulder. Just that one look had become her obsession spanning 2 lifetimes. She had chased after him, transforming from a naive young girl into a beautiful young woman. She thought that as long as she worked hard enough and persevered, she could warm his heart. But she hadn't known that, from the very beginning, she was merely background scenery in his and Sarah's love story, a tool Sarah used to highlight her own gentle and generous nature. When the plane landed at the Zurich airport, it was early evening local time. The sunset dyed the entire sky, a gentle pinkish orange. The wind carried a hint of chill from the Alps, blending with the caramel scent from a roadside cafe. Ethan had come to pick her up in person. He wore a simple white button-down shirt, his tall figure standing exceptionally straight, his gaze gentle. When he saw her, a long unseen smile bloomed on his lips. "Chloe, it's been a long time." He stepped forward and naturally took her suitcase. His gaze stopped at the faint scar on her face and the bandages on her arm. His brows furrowed slightly. "You still got hurt?" Chloe shook her head. "It's nothing. Everything is in the past now." He didn't ask anything else, only saying softly, "Let's go. I'll take you to see your new apartment. It's right near the university. You can see the Limmat River just by opening the window." Ethan's car drove smoothly along the streets of Zurich. Along the way were Gothic-style buildings with vibrantly colored stained glass windows. Pedestrians walked at a leisurely pace, and street artists played violins with melodious tunes. Here, there were no strict rules of the military compound, no cold face of Marcus, and no hypocritical flattery from Sarah. Everything was unfamiliar, yet it made her feel incredibly at ease. The apartment he had prepared for her was located in a small building by the river. It had 1 bedroom and 1 living room, decorated in a minimalist Nordic style. The floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room faced directly toward the Limmat River, where yachts drifted sluggishly on the surface. In the distance were the pointed spires of the university. The bedroom was furnished with completely brand-new furniture. On the study desk, the specialized textbooks for the design department at the Zurich University of the Arts had even been laid out in advance. The closet held clothes suitable for the local climate, and even the skincare products on the bathroom sink were the exact brands she was used to using in her past life. "I asked your parents about your preferences. I don't know if they suit your taste," Ethan said. He stood at the door looking at her, his tone carrying a hint of apprehension. Chloe turned around, her eyes welling up with tears. "Ethan, thank you. Truly, thank you." In her past life, Ethan was the only one who had treated her with genuine sincerity. Before he went abroad, he had held her hand and advised her not to be so overly obsessed with Marcus, saying that a man worthy of her entrusting her whole life to wouldn't let her suffer so many grievances. But at that time, she was completely blinded. She only felt that he was being a busybody, and even threw back disrespectful words that broke his heart. Later, when he returned to the States, what he saw was her rotting corpse. She heard that he had kept vigil at her grave for 3 days and 3 nights, his eyes red as he said that had he known, he should have forced her to leave with him back then. In this life, she finally didn't miss out on his kindness again. Ethan smiled and rubbed her head just like when they were kids. "Why are you being so polite with me? We grew up together, after all. Get some good rest and adjust to the time zone first. Tomorrow, I'll take you to the university, to get familiar with the environment. I've already spoken to your academic advisor. She knows you've just been through a lot, so she'll give you time to adapt." He placed the keys and a bank card down, gave her a few more reminders about daily life, and then quietly took his leave. Before leaving, he even closed the floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room, afraid that the wind blowing from the river would make her catch a cold. Left all alone in the apartment, Chloe walked over to the windows and looked at the river scenery outside. Taking out her phone, for the first time, she actively deleted Marcus's contact number and simultaneously blocked all of Sarah's social media accounts. Then, she opened her camera, took a picture of the sunset over the Limmat River, and posted a status on her social media feed with just one simple sentence. Every past is but a prelude. The road ahead is long and radiant. She didn't include any emotions related to Norfolk. It was purely to record the peace of this moment. She thought this was the final end between her and Norfolk, with Marcus, and with Sarah. But unexpectedly, this was only the beginning of another entanglement. The days in Zurich passed peacefully and fully. She quickly adapted to the rhythm of the university. The design department's courses placed a stronger emphasis on creativity and practical application compared to those back home. Her academic advisor was a kind, elderly, Swiss woman. She had reviewed the draft of Chloe's graduation design and was full of praise for her tranquility theme concept. She said Chloe had perfectly merged emotional depth with military elements and encouraged her to enter it into an international creative design competition once the collection was fully complete. Chloe poured all her heart and soul into her studies and designs. Every day, she buried herself in the drawing studios and design labs from early morning until late at night. The sound of her pen gliding across paper and the clacking of her keyboard became the main melody of her life. Ethan visited her frequently. Sometimes he brought a hot cup of cocoa, other times a freshly baked croissant. They would stroll along the Limmat River together, chatting about interesting things at school, his military projects, and their plans for the future. The only thing they actively avoided was any mention of Norfolk. He never pressed her about the pain of her past, choosing instead to quietly stay by her side. Whenever she occasionally spaced out, he would hand her a tissue or tell a lighthearted joke to divert her attention. Her body gradually recovered. The scar on her face faded until it was practically invisible, and the bandages on her arms had been removed, leaving only faint marks. She started learning how to do her makeup, how to wear pretty dresses, and how to make friends with her classmates. On weekends, she would go see exhibitions at the art galleries and museums in Zurich, hike at the foot of the Alps, or feed the swans by the lake. She was slowly living out the version of herself she had never been able to achieve in her past life, happy, confident, and carefree, with a light shining in her eyes once again. It was only occasionally, when she worked overtime drawing blueprints late into the night and saw the lights of thousands of homes outside her window, that she would remember the military compound in Norfolk. Remembering the years she spent chasing after Marcus still brought a fleeting pang of bitterness to her heart, but it was only momentary, quickly fading away amidst her present life. She thought Marcus would never appear in her life again. That was until 3 months later, at the university's design exhibition, when she saw that familiar silhouette. It was the annual design exhibition at the Zurich University of the Arts. Her tranquility-themed military creative design collection was placed right in the center of the exhibition hall. The dominant color palette was black, white, and gray, paired with subdued metallic materials, perfectly blending the rigidness of the military with the delicacy of a secret, unrequited love. It caught the eyes of quite a few attendees. She was explaining her design concept to her advisor when she looked up and saw a man in a black trench coat standing at the entrance of the hall. He was tall, with deep facial features and a jawline that remained as sharp as ever. However, his complexion was much more haggard than she remembered, with bloodshot eyes and slightly messy hair. He was no longer the meticulous, impeccably groomed Major General with a powerful aura of the past. It was Marcus. Her heart skipped a beat. Instinctively, she wanted to avoid him, but her feet felt as if they were nailed to the spot. His gaze pierced through the noisy crowd and landed squarely on her. In his eyes there was shock, disbelief, guilt, and a trace of incomprehensible stubbornness. All the surrounding clamor seemed to vanish in an instant. She could only hear the beating of her own heart, along with his cold words from her previous life echoing in her head. "It's better that she's dead." Her academic advisor noticed her unusual reaction. Following her gaze, the advisor asked softly, "Chloe, do you know him?" Chloe snapped back to reality and forced a stiff smile. "No, I don't." With that, she turned to leave, but her wrist was suddenly gripped tightly by a warm hand. The grip was incredibly strong, carrying an undeniable sense of authority. "Chloe Smith," Marcus's voice sounded by her ear. It was incredibly hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken properly in a very long time. "Do you really not want to see me that badly?" She forcefully tried to shake off his hand, but he held on so tightly that his knuckles turned white, as if he was terrified that she would disappear the moment he let go. "Major General, please have some self-respect," she said coldly, her tone carrying an unprecedented distance. "I don't think there is anything left for us to talk about." "Nothing left to talk about?" He laughed, a deep, bitter sound. "Chloe, after you left, a lot of things happened in Norfolk. Don't you want to know?" She turned her face away, refusing to look at him. "I don't want to know, and it has nothing to do with me. Major General, please let me go. This is a university design exhibition. Don't disturb the other people." Around them, quite a few people were already casting curious glances. Her advisor stood to the side, her brows furrowed slightly. Marcus finally let go, but he didn't leave. Instead, he followed right behind her, lowering his voice. I've been looking for you for 3 months, Chloe. From Norfolk to Zurich, I searched for you for 3 whole months. Her footsteps faltered, but she didn't turn her head. I know I was wrong. His voice was choked with emotion. This was the first time she had ever heard Marcus show vulnerability. Chloe, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have trusted Sarah. I shouldn't have hit you. I shouldn't have locked you up, and I shouldn't have let you suffer so much. Will you please come back? She turned around and looked at him, her eyes completely devoid of any emotion. Marcus, you don't know you were wrong. You're just regretting it. You're regretting that you were blind enough to trust a venomous snake of a woman. You're regretting that you lost someone who always revolved around you, but you brought all of this upon yourself. No, that's not it. I'm not just regretting, he hurriedly explained, his eyes red. I've seen Sarah's true colors. I truly know I was wrong. Chloe, can you give me a chance to make it up to you? Make it up to me? She let out a laugh, laughing so hard that tears almost fell from her eyes. Marcus, what exactly are you going to use to make it up to me? Will you make up for my obsession spanning 2 lifetimes? Will you make up for the despair I felt when I died a tragic death in that bathtub in my previous life? Will you make up for how, in this life, you shoved me off that stage, leaving me to be beaten by a mob and subjected to cyberbullying across the entire internet? Can you possibly make up for any of these things? Her words were like sharp blades viciously stabbing into Marcus's heart. His face instantly turned deathly pale, his lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. Let me tell you this, Marcus. She looked at him, enunciating every word slowly and clearly. I am Chloe Smith. In this life, in the next life, for all eternity, I will never, ever love you again. My stubborn obsession in Norfolk vanished into thin air the moment I boarded the plane to Zurich. Your repentance now, in my eyes, is nothing but a belated and meaningless joke. Having said her piece, she didn't bother giving him another glance. She turned around, walked back to her advisor's side, and continued presenting her design as if he had never even shown up. Marcus stood frozen, staring at her back for a long time without moving. The people passing by in the exhibition hall seemed to have nothing to do with him. In his world, only that retreating figure who would never look back remained. After the design exhibition ended that day, Ethan came to pick her up. Seeing that she didn't look too well, he asked softly, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" She leaned against his shoulder and said softly, "Ethan, Marcus was here." Ethan's body stiffened for a split second. Right after, he gently patted her back, his tone calm. "It's okay. I'm here. If he dares to make things difficult for you, I won't let him get away with it." She looked up at him, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Ethan, thank you. Why are you being so polite with me?" He smiled and rubbed her head. "Let's go. I'll take you out for your favorite cheese fondue. Forget all those unhappy things." Ethan's words were like a tranquilizer, instantly calming her restless heart. He was right. Now she had Ethan, a brand new life, and a bright future. Marcus was nothing more than a passing traveler in her life, a mistaken obsession. Why should she let him affect her mood? But she didn't expect that Marcus's entanglement had only just begun. From that day on, Marcus was like a lingering ghost, appearing in every corner of her life. When she went to campus for classes, he would wait downstairs at the academic building, wearing that black trench coat, silently watching her like a statue. When she went to the design studio to draw, he would stand guard at the door, making no noise and causing no trouble, merely watching her come and go. When she and Ethan strolled along the riverbank, he would drive right behind them, maintaining a distance neither too far nor too close. When she went to the supermarket for groceries, the moment she turned her head, she would always see him standing by the aisles, staring at her with a burning gaze. He wasn't loud, he didn't make a scene, nor did he take the initiative to bother her. He only used this method to remind her of his existence. The pace of life in Zurich was very slow, and people highly valued privacy and personal space. Marcus's behavior quickly attracted the attention of the people around them. Classmates at the university began to gossip, and the downstairs neighbors at her apartment building also cast curious glances. She found it unbearably annoying. Finally, early one weekend morning, when she was blocked by him downstairs at her apartment, she couldn't tolerate it anymore and exploded. "Marcus, what exactly are you trying to do?" She looked at him, her eyes filled with exhaustion and disgust. "I already told you, it's over between us. Why do you keep clinging to me like a lingering ghost? Do you know that your behavior constitutes harassment?" He looked at her, his eyes carrying fatigue along with a heavy stubbornness. "Chloe, I just want to make it up to you. I just want you to give me a chance." "A chance?" "I've given you countless chances," she said, her eyes turning red and her voice trembling. "When you and Sarah announced your engagement, I smiled and congratulated you. I thought you would see my concession. When I returned all the gifts you had ever given me, I thought you would see my resolve. When Sarah plotted to frame me, I asked if you were willing to believe me just once. That was the last chance I ever gave you. But what did you do? You chose to believe her. You hit me. You locked me up. You let me get beaten by a mob, and you made me suffer every possible grievance. Marcus, you were the one who personally pushed me away. You were the one who single-handedly destroyed every possibility. And now you come begging me to give you a chance? Do you think that's even possible? I know I was wrong. I know I was the one who pushed you away with my own hands. He took a step forward, wanting to touch her face, but she dodged him forcefully. Don't touch me, she yelled. Marcus, you're dirty. Those words were like a sledgehammer, viciously smashing into Marcus's heart. He staggered, his face turning as pale as a sheet of paper. The light in his eyes faded away bit by bit. I'm dirty, he muttered to himself, pulling a bitter smile at the corners of his mouth. Yes, I'm dirty. I don't deserve you. But Chloe, I truly know I was wrong. I live in regret every single day. As soon as I close my eyes, I see the way you looked when you were surrounded and beaten by those people. I see how you looked when you fell down the stage steps. I see the despair in your eyes. I'm going crazy. Chloe, without you, I'm going crazy. That's what you deserve, she stated coldly. This is the retribution you deserve to face. Right at that moment, Ethan's car pulled up to the curb. He pushed the door open, stepped out, and walked over to her side, shielding her behind him. His cold gaze stared fixedly at Marcus. Major General, Ethan's voice was calm but carried an unquestionable aura of authority. Chloe has made it clear that she doesn't want to see you and doesn't want anything to do with you. For you to harass her relentlessly like this, I'm afraid it's quite beneath someone of your status. Ethan, this is between Chloe and me. It has nothing to do with you. Marcus's gaze landed on Ethan, carrying a heavy, deep-seated hostility. She is the person I hold most dear in my heart. Her business is my business. Ethan looked at him, enunciating every word. Marcus, ask yourself, do you deserve Chloe? The only things you've ever given her are pain and grievances, whereas what I can give her is stability and happiness. I advise you to leave Zurich as soon as possible. Don't disturb her life anymore. Otherwise, I don't mind showing you who really has more influence here in Zurich. Ethan's words were not unfounded. He had been working on military projects in Zurich for years and had numerous connections with local politicians and businessmen. Dealing with someone like Marcus, who was far from his own turf, would be as easy as flipping his hand. Marcus looked at the way Ethan protected her, and looked at her hiding behind Ethan, her eyes holding nothing but disgust and alienation toward him. His heart ached as if it were being sliced by a knife. He knew Ethan was right. He couldn't bring her happiness. The only thing he could give her was endless pain. But he was still unwilling to accept it. He couldn't resign himself to losing her just like this, and he couldn't bear to see her nestled in someone else's arms. Chloe? He looked at her, his eyes carrying one final glimmer of hope. I'll ask you one more time. Are you truly refusing to give me even the slightest chance? She stepped out from behind Ethan and looked at him, not a single trace of hesitation in her eyes. Marcus, that will never, ever be possible. Those words completely shattered Marcus's last glimmer of hope. He looked at her, staring for a very, very long time. Finally, he slowly lowered his head, his shoulders trembling slightly. It was as if he had just shed a heavy burden of 1,000 pounds, yet also as if he had lost every ounce of his strength. Okay, he said softly, his voice so hoarse it was barely audible. I'll leave. With that said, he turned around and walked step by step toward his car. His retreating figure was desolate and lonely, like a stray wild goose that had lost its flock. He didn't look back. He got straight into his car, started the engine, and slowly drove away, disappearing at the end of the Zurich street. She looked in the direction where his car had disappeared. Her heart didn't have the slightest ripple of emotion. There was only a sense of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. Ethan held her hand and said softly, It's all right, he's gone. He won't bother us anymore. She leaned into his embrace and nodded, her eyes welling up with tear snot out of sadness, but out of gratitude. She was grateful that she had finally and completely escaped the man who had entangled her for 2 lifetimes. She was grateful that she could finally let go of the past and hold tightly onto the happiness right in front of her. She had thought that Marcus would just leave Zurich like that and never appear again. But she didn't expect that, a week later, she would receive news from her parents. Sarah had gone mad. When her parents called, she and Ethan were preparing dinner together. On the other end of the line, her mother's voice carried a hint of complexity. Chloe, news just came from Norfolk. Sarah has gone crazy. The movements of her hands paused, but her heart didn't waver. She just asked softly, what happened? I'm not entirely sure about the exact situation, her mother said. I only heard that after Marcus returned from Zurich, he completely laid his cards on the table with Sarah. He brought out all the evidence of Sarah framing you. This included the proof that she stole your design, orchestrated the entire birthday party act, pushed you down the stairs, and spread rumors to subject you to cyberbullying. All of that evidence was handed over to the military base command and the elders of the Smith family. Her mother continued. When the Smith family elders found out, they were absolutely furious. They directly kicked Sarah out of the Smith family and canceled the engagement between her and Marcus. Marcus also completely cut ties with her. He even submitted a request to the military base for disciplinary action, stating that he was a poor judge of character and had enabled the person next to him to commit evil acts. In an instant, Sarah fell from the clouds straight to the bottom of the abyss. Not only was she abandoned by the Smith family and subjected to the pointing and gossiping of the people on the base, but she was also investigated by the police on suspicion of defamation and slander. She couldn't withstand such a massive blow, so her mental state broke down. She has now been admitted to a psychiatric hospital. I heard that she acts crazy every single day, constantly calling out your name and begging Marcus not to leave her. Her father took the phone and spoke in a deep voice. Chloe, that poisoning case at the stray animal rescue shelter has also been clearly investigated. It was Sarah who paid someone to do it. She wanted to throw all the dirty water onto you so that you could never hold your head high. Now that the poisoner has been caught, there's yet another charge added to Sarah's list of crimes. Listening to her parents' words, Chloe felt no sympathy whatsoever in her heart. There was only a sense of peace. Good and evil had finally met their rightful karma. Sarah had lived her entire life in jealousy. She was jealous that Chloe was the precious daughter of the Smith family, jealous that Chloe was deeply loved by her parents, jealous that Chloe could fearlessly chase after Marcus, and jealous that Chloe had everything she ever wanted. She always felt that Chloe had stolen what belonged to her, but she never once considered that the things she wanted were never stolen by Chloe. Rather, she had used schemes and tricks to get them. Things obtained in such a way could never be kept in the end. She had calculated and plotted everything, only to end up alienated by everyone and mentally insane. She had brought all of this entirely upon herself. As for Marcus, although he had finally seen Sarah's true colors, he also paid the price for his mistakes. He received a major demerit from the military command, was demoted from major general to lieutenant colonel, was transferred out of Norfolk, and was stationed at a remote border outpost. But so what? What he lost was not just his military rank and position, but also the girl who had once loved him, with all her eyes and heart, along with the happiness he was supposed to have. That was the retribution he deserved, as well as the stubborn obsession he couldn't let go of across 2 lifetimes. After hanging up the phone, Ethan walked over and gently embraced her. "Did you hear all of it?" She nodded. "Yes. Are you feeling uncomfortable about it?" he asked softly. "No," she shook her head, leaning into his embrace. "I just feel that the dust has finally settled on everything." Yes, everything had settled in the dust. Sarah had received the punishment she deserved. Marcus had also paid the price for his mistakes. And as for her, she had finally escaped the dark shadow of the past, securing her own life in Zurich. The days passed peacefully and fully. After completely finishing her Tranquility design collection, she entered it into the International Creative Design Competition and won the gold medal on her very first try. At the award ceremony, she stood on the podium, accepted the trophy, and looked down at Ethan in the audience. His eyes were filled with pride and tenderness. He even made a finger heart gesture at her. At that moment, she knew she had finally lived to become the version of herself she had always desired. After the competition ended, her designs received the favor of quite a few internationally renowned brands. They competed to extend olive branches, hoping to collaborate with her. She didn't agree immediately. Instead, she chose to establish a design studio of their own, together with Ethan. It primarily focused on military, creative, and art design, combining Eastern aesthetics with Western creativity. She named the studio Rebirth, a new life, implying that her new life began from here. The studio developed very smoothly. Relying on unique design concepts and high-quality works, it quickly established a firm foothold in Zurich. Even back in the States, there were quite a few collaborative partners. Occasionally, she would return to the States, but she never went back to Norfolk again. She only negotiated collaborations in New York, Los Angeles, and other major cities. She met up with her parents, who, following her advice, had moved out of Norfolk and settled in New York, staying far away from that place of drama and gossip. When returning to the States, she would occasionally hear news about Marcus. She heard that he was stationed at the border and worked extremely hard, training and carrying out missions every day, living like an emotionless machine. There had never been any woman by his side. When people introduced potential matches to him, he would unequivocally reject them all. He would only say that he already had someone in his heart and couldn't hold anyone else. Some people said the person in his heart was Sarah, but Chloe knew the person in his heart was the Chloe Smith who had once chased after him, her eyes overflowing with his reflection. It was the Chloe Smith whom he had pushed away with his own hands, the one who would never turn back again. It was just that he realized it too late. The most cruel thing in this world is nothing other than being too late. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. Chloe and Ethan's studio had gained quite a bit of fame, both domestically and internationally. The design works of Rebirth had become iconic in the field of military creative design. She had also transformed from an immature design student into a renowned designer in the industry. Over the past 3 years, she hadn't seen Marcus again, nor had she heard too much news about him. She only occasionally learned through her parents' words that he was still stationed at the border. His military rank had gradually climbed back up, and he had become a major general once again. The only difference was that his temperament had become even more silent and reticent, and the space beside him remained completely empty. Regarding the news about him, her heart had long since stopped feeling any ripples. His life had nothing to do with her. Her life had long since held no place for him. For the past 3 years, Ethan had always been by her side. He was gentle, considerate, and forgiving, respecting every decision she made and supporting every dream she had. He would quietly prepare late-night snacks for her when she worked overtime deep into the night. He would brainstorm with her when she hit a bottleneck in her designs, and he would hold her tightly whenever she occasionally recalled the pain of the past, reassuring her that he was there and everything would be all right. He gave her an overwhelming sense of security and a happiness she had never experienced in her past life. On a late afternoon with a light, drizzling rain, Ethan took her to a small town at the foot of the Alps. Next to the town's church was a vast lavender field. The sea of purple flowers swaying in the rain was as beautiful as a painting. He held her hand and walked to the middle of the lavender field, suddenly got down on one knee, and took a ring box out of his pocket. Opening it, inside was a minimalist diamond ring. The diamond shone gently in the rain. "Chloe," Ethan looked at her, his eyes brimming with tenderness and deep affection. "From the time we played together under the sycamore tree in the military compound as kids, to the time you suffered so many grievances chasing after Marcus, and then to when you came to Zurich to start over, I have been by your side for 20 years. Over the past 20 years, I've watched you cry, watched you smile, watched you be stubborn, and watched you grow. In my heart, there has never been anyone but you. I know you once had a scar in your heart and an unforgettable past, but I want to tell you to let bygones be bygones. In the days to come, I want to hold your hand and walk forward together. I will use the rest of my life to cherish you, love you, and protect you, so that you never have to suffer even the slightest grievance again, and so that you can forever be the Chloe Smith with eyes full of light. Chloe Smith, will you marry me?" She looked at the deep affection in his eyes, looked at the diamond ring, and tears instantly streamed down her face. This time, they were tears of happiness. She nodded and choked out, "I do, Ethan. I do." He smiled, tears also shining in his eyes. He stood up, slipped the diamond ring onto her ring finger, then pulled her into a tight embrace. Leaning close to her ear, he said softly, "Thank you, Chloe. Thank you for being willing to give me a chance to protect you for the rest of my life." She leaned against his chest, listening to his strong heartbeat and feeling his warm embrace, her heart overflowing with happiness. In her past life, for a man who didn't love her, she had thrown herself into the fire like a moth, ending up bruised and battered, ultimately dying a tragic death in a cold bathtub. The only person to collect her remains was Ethan. In this life, she had finally learned to let go, learned to love herself, and finally waited for someone who truly loved her, cherished her, and was willing to protect her for a lifetime. It turned out that the best kind of love in this world had never been a stubborn obsession, blindly charging into the fire like a moth. Rather, it was a gentle companionship like a steady stream of water. It was knowing if she was cold or warm, understanding her joy or sorrow. It was being willing to hold her hand and walk toward the future together, regardless of how many storms she had weathered. The wedding was held on the banks of the Limmat River in Zurich. It was very simple, attended only by her parents, a few close friends, and the staff from their studio. She wore a pure white wedding dress, linking arms with her father as she walked toward Ethan, who was dressed in a crisp suit. His eyes were filled with a gentle, smiling warmth as he reached out to hold her hand. The priest asked the classic question, "Do you take Ethan to be your wedded husband, for richer or for poorer? In sickness and in health, in good times and in bad, to love, cherish, respect, and accept him, and to be faithful to him forever until the end of your life?" She looked straight into Ethan's eyes and answered firmly, "I do." He also looked at her, enunciating every word clearly, "I do." At the moment they exchanged rings, the sunlight scattered across the surface of the Limmat River, sparkling on the ripples. The melodious chiming of bells echoed from the University of Zurich in the distance. Everything was so beautiful that it was beyond words. Life after marriage was simple and happy. Chloe and Ethan continued to run the Rebirth studio together. Occasionally, they would travel the world, taking in different landscapes, experiencing various cultures, and gathering inspiration for their designs. They would jog together by the river early in the morning, sit together on the balcony, watching the sunset at dusk, and curl up together on the sofa to watch movies at night. Just like any other ordinary married couple, they lived through the trivial, everyday matters of daily life. He would clearly remember all her preferences, prepare little surprises for her on every anniversary, take meticulous care of her when she was sick, and tolerate her when she occasionally lost her temper. She also learned how to love someone, how to make breakfast for him, how to wait for him to come home whenever he worked overtime, and how to become his most solid rock of support whenever he faced difficulties. Their love didn't have earth-shattering vows, nor did it have turbulent and dramatic twists and turns. It only consisted of a gentle companionship like a steady stream of water, along with a tenderness that seeped deep into their bones. In the 5th year of their marriage, Chloe and Ethan had a daughter together. They affectionately called her Haven, a name that meant peace and smooth sailing. Haven grew up to look a lot like Ethan, inheriting his gentle, almond-shaped eyes. When she smiled, she had 2 tiny dimples that were incredibly adorable. Her arrival brought even more joy to their lives. Ethan became a genuine, doting girl dad. Every day, the very first thing he did upon coming home from work was to hold her and kiss her endlessly. He even turned down quite a bit of work at the studio, just wanting to spend more time with his daughter. As for Chloe, she also gradually slowed down her pace of work, dedicating more time to her family. Watching Haven grow up day by day, from babbling her first words to taking her first wobbly steps, Chloe's heart was filled to the brim with happiness. This summer, she and Ethan took Haven and her parents on a vacation to a domestic beach in the States. They chose a small, little-known coastal city. It wasn't crowded, and the scenery was beautiful, with fine white sand and deep blue ocean water. Seeing the ocean for the first time, Haven was incredibly excited. Wearing a little dress and walking barefoot, she ran back and forth across the sand, with Ethan following closely behind, afraid she might fall. Chloe and her parents sat on the beach chairs, watching the father and daughter with bright smiles on their faces. Right at this moment, she spotted a familiar silhouette on the beach not far away. A man in a white button-down shirt was standing there. He was tall and straight, but he looked somewhat older than in her memories. His temples were speckled with gray hair, and between his brows lay a faint trace of exhaustion and loneliness. He was looking out at the open sea, his back cutting an incredibly solitary figure. It was Marcus. Chloe was slightly stunned for a moment, but quickly regained her composure. There was not a single ripple of emotion in her heart. It was just like seeing a stranger. She gently averted her gaze. Ethan noticed her unusual reaction. Following her gaze, he saw Marcus. He walked to her side, took her hand, and asked softly, "Do you want to go over and say hi?" She shook her head and smiled. "No need. It's not necessary." Duh. That's right. It was no longer necessary. To her, he had long become a stranger who was no longer important. Everything in the past had vanished like smoke. It wasn't worth bringing up, nor was it worth crossing paths again. Marcus seemed to have noticed their gaze as well. He turned around and saw her, saw Ethan beside her, and saw little Haven being held in Ethan's arms, smiling radiantly. His gaze landed on her and lingered for a long time. In his eyes, there was astonishment, jealousy, and a faint trace of bitterness. He saw the diamond ring on her ring finger, the happy smile on her face, and the gentle protectiveness Ethan showed toward her. He saw the warm, harmonious picture of their family of 3. He must have known that she was living a very happy life, now much happier than anything he could have ever given her. He didn't walk over. He just stood there, watching them from afar, watching for a very, very long time. Then, he slowly turned back around and continued to look out at the sea. His back remained as lonely as ever. Only this time, she could see a sense of release in his silhouette. Perhaps he finally understood that once some things are lost, they can never be found again. Once some people miss each other, they can never cross paths again. And she, in the end, was not the person who could walk with him to the end of the road. Perhaps he had finally learned how to let go of his obsession with her, to let go of the regrets of the past, and to begin learning how to live his own life. That afternoon, Marcus remained standing by the sea while their family played on the sand. There was no intersection between them, whatsoever, no greetings, not even a single word spoken. They were like people from 2 entirely different worlds. By dusk, as they were getting ready to leave the beach, she turned her head to look back. Marcus was no longer there. All that was left was the vast, endless ocean and the evening glow filling the sky. She smiled faintly, hooked her arm through Ethan's, looked down at Haven, and said softly, "Let's go. We're going home." Ethan nodded and held her hand tightly. The silhouettes of their family of 3 vanished into the fading light of the setting sun. From now on, with high mountains and long rivers between them, they would go their separate ways, never to cross paths again.
The best revenge really is just moving on. While jealousy and regret consumed Sarah and Marcus, Chloe's courage to walk away brought her real peace and healthy love.
If a relationship is draining you, don't be afraid to leave. Thanks for watching. See you next time.